In 1524, William Tyndale had fled from England to finish his translation of the Bible. He came to Germany. It was a country in spiritual and political turmoil. Here, in Wittenberg, Martin Luther's outburst against the Pope had ignited a religious revolt. Lutheran churches in Germany had introduced the kind of reforms which once Wycliffe had hoped for, and Tyndale now dreamed of. They had services in their own language instead of Latin, and read their own Bible, which was freely printed throughout the country. And they were able to do so because, using the power of printing, Luther's ideas had made huge inroads into papal authority. So the obvious place for Tyndale to have come was Wittenberg, but in fact there's very little evidence to go on. You can search through the letters and journals of Martin Luther and his associates, and you won't find any mention of this rogue Englishman, William Tyndale. And Tyndale himself, of course, for understandable reasons, tended to be a bit secretive about where he was and what he was doing. But there's one tantalizing piece of evidence. The matriculation book of Wittenberg University still survives. Everyone who came here to study had to be registered and swear allegiance to the university rules and statutes. Now here's the book. And if we look down a page under the entry for 1508, we find the name Father Martin Luther of Mansfeld, underlined in red. And then, 16 years later, there's something interesting. Guglielmus Dalton ex Angliae. William Dalton of England. Could that possibly be William Tyndale? Except he's changed around the last two syllables in order to put people off the scent. So, did Tyndale come to Wittenberg? We'll probably never know for sure, but certainly there's a sense in which Wittenberg came to Tyndale. This was the cradle of Lutheranism, and the ideas of religious freedom which spread throughout Germany strengthened Tyndale in his resolve that the same thing must happen in England. It was in Germany that Tyndale finished his translation of the New Testament. All around him was the clatter of foreign speech, but it didn't cloud his devotion to his native tongue. With his assistant, William Roy, a former English friar, he worked from the original Greek, with Luther's version of the Latin beside him. In doing so, he transformed the Greek text into the foundation of all subsequent English literature. Words written to be read out loud, which have entered our speech.
He went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye, and all men shall revile you.
The translator always has this responsibility to be meaningful to his reader, and yet try and hold on to what the author intended. Tyndale was more than good, he was excellent. There are very good reasons for that. He knew probably 7 languages. He was direct. He wanted Anglo-Saxon words. He didn't like the Latinate words. He tried to get the English words, and that's what we've received from him.
Some people think Tyndale meant to do this. He certainly knew that the Anglo-Saxons had translated at least part of the Bible. But another potent influence was the dialect of his native county.
Tyndale was using words which came from his own Gloucestershire. He talks about people being fainty, flaggy, goggle-eyed, mizzling.
Mizzling?
Now, the authorized version says light rain. Okay, fine. Mizzling, you understand mizzling.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That was his skill. He gave us our English. And he gave us the English of Shakespeare, and every author, every writer ever since. We owe a huge debt to Tyndale. He gave us words which are in everyday usage.
And it came to pass in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth, a city. The powers that be are ordained. And when the centurion which stood before him saw that he so cried, and gave up the ghost, ye are the salt of the earth, then they having no law are a law unto themselves.
Tyndale's language had about it a richness, a vitality and an immediacy. But more than that, it was also a controversial and partisan text driven by a very particular reformist theology. And that in turn came from a translation which went right back to the original Greek and revealed a very different vision of Christianity, a vision which Tyndale believed had been willfully obscured by the traditional Latin of the Roman Catholic Church. Tyndale was becoming the English Luther.
Luther liberated him. Luther's 1522 September Testament was a model for him. If Luther could do it in Germany, he could do it in England.
And though I bestowed all my goods to feed...
The very words of his New Testament expressed Tyndale's subversive theology. Instead of the word priest, he used presbyter or elder, which had no sacramental overtones. Instead of charity, which implied that you could buy your way into heaven with good works, he used love.
Now abideth faith, hope, and love, even these three. But the chief of these is love.
And in Tyndale's translation, the mighty hierarchy of the church became just a congregation.
And I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my congregation, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it.
To change these in any way was heresy because you were changing what the church said. The church could do no wrong.
By August 1525, Tyndale was ready. He had completed the New Testament and added a prologue and some notes to the text. He moved to Cologne to have it printed, and then there was trouble. The printer was raided. It was the first skirmish in the final battle for the English Bible. A few months after that Cologne raid, William Tyndale finally got his New Testament printed. Here it is. Doesn't look very much to worry about, does it? Nice compact size for handing around in private. And this is probably one of the most revolutionary books ever to be published. Within weeks, the first of thousands of copies began to make their way into England. The effect was incendiary and polarized the country into those who were for reform of the church and those who were against. Christianity in England was changed forever. Until Tyndale's translation began arriving from Germany, the challenge to the church in England had taken two basic forms. There was the old tradition of lollardy, which had survived since Wycliffe's day by withdrawing into the private sector. And there were a few people in the universities and in the merchant community who were in touch with events in Germany and knew about Luther's attack on the church. Neither, frankly, was much of a threat to the established order. Tyndale's work changed everything.
Rather than just have to round up a few troublesome heretics, the government had to somehow prevent the circulation of thousand upon thousand of printed Bibles. And so suddenly you had the chance for a mass reform movement among common people.
And indeed, once it arrived in England, Tyndale's New Testament became a bestseller. The rhythmic earthiness of Tyndale's language, written to be read out loud, attracted a huge audience. Even today, actors recognise it as almost the equal of Shakespeare.